Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. I'm Brother Ali. This is the last week that I'll be broadcasting and recording from this workspace, studio, office here in Istanbul, Turkey, which has become my family's new home. Because of the fact that I'm headed out on tour. You know, I toured for 18 years and then we had this 2-year kind of break that I don't know if anyone would have chosen. I don't know if any of us would have chosen to experience this pandemic, but like many of us, I'm really very, very grateful for it. I really didn't realize how much I needed to stop and slow down and to sit with myself and to, instead of speaking all the time, you know, I had developed a lifestyle of being on stage almost every day. And when I wasn't on stage, I was speaking or teaching or learning or organizing and holding space for community and things like that. And I just realized it's just output. And like we talked about in the episode with Dr. Cornel West, I believe that it's my calling, but part of really mastering your calling is also developing a balance, to say that there's gotta be a balance between speech and silence. Silence is an important part of speech. Being with people, in order to do it beautifully, then we have to have a strong practice of solitude as well. You know, speaking also requires listening. That's one of the things I love about this podcast is I really am developing and seeking to develop my ability to listen actively and to really be present with people when I'm talking to them. So this has been an amazing period, and honestly, I'm feeling reflective. I'm reflecting on it. But I also am grieving it a little bit. But I'm also really excited to be back on the road again. There's a feeling of being in a room full of people that are united around a certain intention, a certain energy, a certain desire for connection, to find hope in it, to find hope in the struggle. You know, that's so much of what my music is about. And that's so much what I share with the people that listen to my music. And then to come together and experience that in a room full of people with that energy and that intention and, you know, moving in tandem with one another and feeling these things and having the memories. I have the memories of when I made this music, and people have the memories of when they heard it and when the music entered their lives. And I just released 2 new songs that I feel like are really timely, both for the fact that we get to be back on the road again, but also for this period that we've all kind of been living through. One of them is called Going Through It, new song. And I'm talking about real stories of people that I share life with who have been experiencing catastrophes and nightmares and, you know, profound challenges. But in all of the cases of all these people, they have carried it and they've received it, and they're moving through it with such beauty and with such grace and with such dignity and hope, you know, that it's just incredibly inspiring to me. You know, so that's what that song is. And then another one is called More Than This, which is just the acknowledgement of the fact that, like, the mundane stuff of life that we get so caught up in, you know, the fact that we've allowed that stuff to take up so much real estate in the time and in the attention that we give it doesn't mean that it's actually the most important thing. You know, what's most important is who we are and how we are, what our intention is, and the ways that we engage life. You know, very short time between womb and tomb. What kind of person are you going to be before you die? You know, that's what this podcast is about. That's what the music has been about, you know, and that's what these shows are about. And so I'm really excited and grateful to be on stage again and looking forward to it. If you go to brotherali.com, all of the stuff is there. You'll see the new singles are there. You'll see all of the information about this podcast. You'll see in the event section all of the shows that we have coming up. There is a mailing list that you can sign, you know, so that you'll be first to be informed when we have new dates. We're just doing the West Coast leg of the tour, but inshallah, we're booking East Coast. We'll do some in the South. We'll do some in Europe. We'll do some in Australia. We'll do hopefully some in Canada, you know, little bit. I don't want to go back to living completely on tour the way that I used to, but I do want to check in with the people that we've been able to share this experience and this ride with. So head to brotherali.com and check all that out. Our guest on the podcast this week is a really iconic figure, a historical figure. Ilhan Omar, the U.S. Congresswoman, is something of a polarizing figure. And I think that's the case just because of her own life history, her story, her reality. To be certain, it has something to do with her political ideology as well, being part of, what they call the squad, this like young, up and coming, very progressive, or some would even say radical element of the Democratic Party. But so much of, I think, why she's become a polarizing target is just because of who she is, because of the fact that she is a Somali woman who fled, her family fled Somalia during the Civil War. They were refugees in a camp in Kenya, and then they came as refugees to the United States. And she became an activist, an organizer. She's a mom. And then she rose to the ranks of representing the state of Minnesota in the Congress, and doing that as an African-born Muslim woman who wears a hijab. So just symbolically, I think so much of why she is polarizing for people is just the symbolic nature of what her identity represents. But Ilhan is somebody that I've been in community with for years. Like I shared so many community spaces with her, and we knew each other, but we never really sat down and connected. She's one of the people that we're very blessed and honored and grateful to have on the podcast that I don't actually have a long-term, profound interaction and relationship with. And it's strange. We talk about it in the podcast, like how have we not actually done this before? But I really have appreciated the opportunity. I started by reading her autobiography, her memoir, which is called This Is What America Looks Like. And what I discovered is what I suspected to be the case, but that, she is a person who has walked through her particular path in life, trying to find the best version of herself, trying to make sense of all of the beauty, the highs and lows and joys and woes in her life, all the beauty that she's experienced, and then also all of the nightmares and catastrophes that have happened around her, and she's done it all in a way where she has always sought to bring things together in a way that makes them better, and that makes sense of it all, and that makes that transforms it into good. And I really thoroughly believe that that's what she's been doing through her entire walk and journey, through her private life and also her public life. And so it was really educational for me to learn these things from her, and inspirational. And then the fact that I got to sit with her and actually ask her about these things. And so I was attempting to ask her questions that she doesn't always get asked. And I was attempting to connect with her and draw inspiration from her on a heart level. A human being is many things. One of the realities of the human being is that we have an intellect. And so our intellect is going to need to find frames so that we can engage with the world of ideas and with the world of meaning. And we arrive at different frames. Even if we're on roughly the same kind of side of an issue, we arrive at different frames. Politically, we don't all see the things the same way. Even within the tradition of Islam, there are many different expressions of Islam, many ways of understanding the theology, the practice, the spiritual path, the identity, the way, there are many ways of understanding these things. And so on an intellectual level, we can have those conversations and we can have those debates. But what I'm interested in is connecting with people on a heart level. And so folks that seem very clearly to me to be looking to rectify, to heal, to connect, to build, to construct, to beautify. Those are people that I'm interested in connecting with, So I'm really grateful to be able to have this time to connect with Ilhan Omar. She's somebody, one of the things that I've always known about her is how deeply courageous she is. She's somebody that gets, active death threats. And it's not just talk. She receives really ugly death threats that are nothing short of terrorism. But she's a person who moves through life with courage. And courage doesn't mean that you're not afraid. It doesn't mean that you're not experiencing fear. I think a lot of times when people are strong, we assume that they don't experience pain. And those people do experience pain. It's just that they have the strength to move even though they're experiencing pain. And it's not that they don't experience fear. It's just that their courage means that they have a deep resource and a well of faith in what they're doing, that it gives them strength of conviction. And so Ilhan is a person that shows up and is really willing to do what she believes is right in every moment, regardless of the fact that she's faced so much in her life. Her life story is really amazing. And regardless of how you feel about the way that she frames things politically and the way that she understands things, theologically, regardless of any of that, on a human level, you have to acknowledge that this is a life that's, and she's young, This is a tremendous life, and this is a tremendous soul, and this is a tremendous human being. So really grateful to be in conversation with U.S. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. We're brought to you this week by the Zakat Foundation and by Roots Birthing Center and by UPF and by Vice Gerent. And really grateful that you're here and hope you enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Jum'ah Mubarak.
Jum'ah Kareem. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I know it's a really busy, not that any time for you isn't busy, but I know that this is gearing up for a new campaign cycle and things. So I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah. Very grateful too.
Alhamdulillah. So if it's okay, we'll just jump right in. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I want to start giving a shout out to David and Wintana. I've done a lot of work with both of them. Me and David got arrested together doing civil disobedience.
No way.
Wintana, oh yeah. And we just both happened to be wearing I Self Divine shirts. We were both wearing Shaka's shirts when we got arrested. Didn't plan it. Went to jail wearing matching t-shirts.
Was this the Jamar Clark?
I think this was Occupy Homes.
Oh, okay, way back.
Yeah, this is back 2012 or so. And then I've been working with Wintana since then too. Me and Wintana worked at Knock together and several things. So.
And my husband was telling me that you and him were at like a Muslim conference in Atlanta years ago together.
Ah, okay.
He used to staff Keith Ellison, so he was with Keith.
Okay. You know what? I always was like, this person looks so familiar. And I'm saying, like, we have a million friends in common and just like family and community. And like, we're part of the same communities. Yeah. But it always just felt like we've kind of missed each other really oddly.
Yeah. I know. I tell people, I'm like, I don't think I've ever met him. And they're like, what?
It's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange. But I mean, we've been at the same events.
And meeting, so.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I'm in Istanbul, Turkey, by the way.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
We moved here about a year ago.
Oh, you're like living there?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow. MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying it?
Love it. It's an adjustment.
I went once and stayed for like 30 hours. I'd love to go back someday.
I don't know if you know this, but it's actually an adjustment to be an immigrant. So...
I might know a little bit about that.
Yeah, somebody told me you might know something about that. I'm so grateful to you for so much about what you've done. I became a Muslim in high school in the 90s. And at that time, in Minnesota, people had no idea what it meant to be a Muslim. And so I'm trying to get time off on Friday to go to the mosque and pray. I'm trying to get off for Eid. And there's like, it might be Tuesday, it might be Wednesday. I'll call you in the morning and let you know. No place to pray, no place to wash. Nobody's letting me, I'm fasting and all this stuff. And nobody really understood what that meant until the Somalis showed up in big numbers and just lived the religion of Islam. And then it just became part of Minnesota. And then, my wife is a black woman, hijabi, and my daughters. And so, for you to do everything that you've done, we're just really, really deeply grateful. And we have so much admiration and love for you. Also very grateful for your book. For the memoir that you wrote, This Is What America Looks Like. If it's okay, I would like to start with so much of entertainment and the media, they've propagated this lie that the African continent is full of poor people, that it's always been that way, living in squalor with backwards governments. And so when catastrophes happen to African people, it seems like, well, that's what's supposed to happen to them, whether it's the slave trade or genocide or colonization and famine and things, and especially civil war. In your memoir, you talk so openly about the experience of one day everything is nice. Like, you had a very nice life as a young girl, extended family living together in a compound. You had a car, going to school, playing with friends, hitting them with sticks, like all kind of just fun kid stuff, cookies, pies, and cakes being baked by family members. And then the next day it changes. And the Civil War broke out. And you recall, even as a young girl, remembering hearing elders say, it feels like it happened overnight. And then your elder sister's classmate is at the door threatening your family. And so in America, we had a civil war. And it feels like the divide, the exact divide that caused that, is as deep as it's ever been. The gulf seems to be as wide as it's ever been. Every issue is polarized and politicized. And as somebody who lived through that specifically, what's your feeling about the state of America? And then how do we speak up for the things that we believe in while elevating the humanity of the people that we disagree with?
Oh, that's deep. I think for those of us who have survived war, I don't know if there are any people living in the United States anymore that have gone through the Civil War here in the U.S. But those of us who come from other parts of the world where they have survived Civil War, one thing is true, right? People, when it's human nature to not want to recognize everything that leads up to that. You want to minimize all the dangers that lay ahead, because you don't want to be the person that is that is sounding the alarm when people are just going about their day and dealing with just the challenges of life. And what I recognize in our today is that if we do not acknowledge the troubles that are brewing, then we will find ourselves in a time where we can't actually turn the tide. And a lot of the people who are now talking about the divides in this country, people will say they themselves are creating division, that they're alarmists. But I think it is important for us, especially in an open society like the United States, for us to have these conversations to say, if we keep going down this road, it's not going to lead anything positive and prosperous. And there is a better way. And I think that, to your second point, there's a difference between engaging in conversation and tolerating people's bigotry and hatred and division. Oftentimes people will create a space for that just because they want to avoid conflict. And I think the absence of conflict is not peace. The absence of conflict really is complacency. And I think when we get into a space where you and I have conflicting thoughts and we are able to debate and have a discussion, respectfully or not, we might ultimately come out on the other side with some sort of general agreement on how we should treat each other. And I think that's the place we need to get to, and that requires for people to recognize each other's humanity and treat one another with dignity. And I think that I believe personally, having been through what I've been through, that people are not born evil, right? People are, your environments shape who you become. And I believe that every single person can be redeemed in some way. And if we give people the opportunity to learn, to grow, to connect, to feel human, then we are all going to be better for it.
You were in a car one time with a chauffeur, a person whose job it was to get you from one place to another safely, and he starts cussing you out and threatening you and calling you all kind of names. And you wrote in your memoir that you prayed for his humanity, that you were deeply touched, by how, present this language of hatred and fear and separation and division is, but also you praying for his humanity. What
Because
everyone seems
you have to lose your humanity in order for you to
Yes.
want to take others' humanity away.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
in this in interaction with this gentleman, I tried to connect to his humanity. I tried to remind him that he reminded me of one of my uncles. That I didn't see him as a stranger or as someone that I should pose danger to or someone who should pose danger to me. And somehow even that didn't allow him to want to create any kind of human connection with me.
Yeah, at the root of this, of so much of this, is the rot of white supremacy and this idea that our humanity isn't enough to make us worthy. That we have to have belonging in this group of whiteness. This idea, this concept of whiteness, that was invented for no other reason than to put some people higher than others on the totem pole or on the hierarchy, and so. The first one to lose their humanity is the one that buys into that idea that, like, my acceptance in this group is what makes me worthwhile, that my humanity is not what it is. What I think so many see on both sides of all of these like polarizing issues is that so many people are sharing that very human experience of sadness, alienation, exhaustion, anxiety. And for so many people, their outlet is to lambast people on the internet, on social media, to cut off their family members that don't agree with them. You famously come back to these two statements all the time that I love. The world belongs to those who show up, and you get what you organize for. When you first started in political life, a lot of the Somali elders threatened to shun you. They were rough on your father because they thought that you were going to overthrow who they had chosen to be the political leaders. Like there can't be more than one. Like it's the Highlander or something. There can only be one. And your response was to have one-to-ones with as many people as you possibly could, which is a really beautiful thing. Can you talk a little bit, please, about the difference between speaking out and activism and actual organizing, and what does it mean to the work to really be able to share space with human beings?
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes we forget how strong a human connection can be and how much we're able to change people if we're willing to make ourselves vulnerable in a space with them, right? My dad used to famously say that it's hard to hate up close, and I believe that it oftentimes is necessary for us to remember that those we hate or those who hate us know little about who we are and what we stand for, what our driving motivations are, what helps us get out of bed. And if we are, willing to humble ourselves and get in a conversation with them, we will realize that we probably have more in common than we expected. When I came to the United States, I was an immigrant kid who grew up in Africa, right? All Black everything. And I came to the United States, and it was a very racialized place. It was the first time I was told I was Black. It was the first time I was told I was Muslim, because I also grew up in an all-Muslim country. So, nobody talked about my Muslim faith. Nobody talked about my race. There was no such thing as race in the country I was growing up in. And so it kind of was like an automatic indoctrination into a society where I was supposed to simultaneously assimilate, but also recognize that there are these divisions, and there was a group that I belonged to, and I had to figure out how to navigate my way within the other groups. And it was a confusing thing for me. And I realized that, as soon as I learned English, that I would have conversations with some of the other immigrant students in my school. I would have conversations with some of the white kids. I would have conversations with some of the Latino kids. And, we would start talking about our upbringings and what made us happy. And it was always, a particular food our parents made, or, the family gatherings, or like how silly our uncles or aunties might have danced, or the weird things they make us do. As a child, everybody hates taking naps. And so we would connect on all of the silly things we got punished for. And then it was easy, right, for us to realize that, like, we are just like each other. The fact that we come from different countries, the fact that we come from different backgrounds, the fact that we are of different races and of different faiths sort of melted into the background, because 95% of our conversations were about our shared commonalities and challenges growing up as kids with, overbearing parents or overbearing grandparents, or, annoying siblings. And so I think that's where I thrive as an organizer. And that's what I love about organizing, because it's easy for me to say, I don't know if Brother Ali would be on board for us to help, our local coffee shop unionize. Because, he's got money and all of this stuff. But I might sit down with you and find out that, yeah, you maybe worked at a coffee shop as a young person, and, this is something that you understand. And so before we have these conversations, we shouldn't judge where people are going to be. And that's, I think, why the 101s are important as you organize, because you get to connect with people, their stories, their backgrounds, their humanity, and then you all can figure out how to work together collectively.
We've been talking for the past several weeks about the Zakat Foundation, and specifically their program to support orphans around the world. It's important to me that 100% of the proceeds, when we donate to orphan relief through zakatfoundation.org, 100% of those proceeds go to the youth, the children, the orphans, and their families. None of it is used for overhead or for salaries or advertising or anything like that. They have other donations that they use for those overhead costs. But when you donate to them in this program, 100% of those proceeds go to them. It's also really important that Zakat Foundation has been working for decades, and they're one of the leading Islamic, like Muslim-led charitable organizations, but they don't only help Muslims. The people that donate and really utilize the great work that they do as an opportunity to give back, it's not only Muslims that donate, and they don't use these programs to proselytize. In the religion of Islam, it's enough that we do good for humanity, and so it's not part of their program that they try to convert people. That's just not what they do. Also, the category of orphan isn't limited to people where both of their children are gone. Really, what who they're looking to serve, and the goal is to serve and support 10,000 orphans this year. And I believe they're operating in something like 14 or 15 countries. These are families that have been fractured and ruptured, and they've experienced tragedy to the point where the parents aren't able to support the children because of the terrible things that have happened in their countries and in their societies. So, maybe both of the parents are gone, but maybe one of the parents is still alive, but for whatever reason, they're not able to support their children. Those families are supported here as well. Another thing that's so dope is that, in the industry of orphan relief and support, It's become a really common practice that you go online or you're sent a brochure or something and you look at the photos of children and you choose a child based on the photo. Amna Mirza, who heads this program is really her baby. She said, that's not a bad way to do things because it opens the hearts of people. But oftentimes in those cases, just because of the reality of colonialism and internalized white supremacy and anti-blackness and all this stuff, that when given photos to look at, people will not necessarily realize, it'll be a subconscious thing, that they're inclining towards younger girls that are lighter skinned. Whereas elder, boys that are a little further along in life, that are black, that they're not getting the same level of support. And it's become, an institutional structural thing that Amna Mirza said, as an institution, we're going to change this. There's not going to be any more photos in the beginning. So you choose, the default setting is that you'll choose that I want to help the kids, that the youth that need the most help, that have been on the waiting list for the longest period of time. Or you could choose a specific region. So if you want to donate to Somalia or Afghanistan or Palestine, you can. But between those two choices, most people, when they face those choices in an explicit way, they say, oh no, I want to help the people that need the most help. And so that's what they choose. And so now the things are being distributed in a much more equitable way. It's also really important to me that Zakat Foundation has people on the ground actually making sure that the goods and resources are being delivered to people and to the people that need them the most, and in a way that's commensurate with their human dignity. So oftentimes, these organizations, they outsource the actual delivery of goods and resources, and things go off the rails. So Zakat Foundation is just really ahead of the curve and on top of all the things that matter the most to me. And also, I don't like to speak on behalf of organizations if I don't know the people that are decision makers. And I know Amna Mirza, I know her team, I know some of the people that work with her, and I know that her attention to detail, to making sure that things are done in the best possible way, is really incredible, and that I can have real conversation and real talk with her because I've had that experience with her. So go to zakatfoundation.org. This is an excellent opportunity to help others and to give back, and to do it in a way where you can feel as certain as possible that the support that you give and offer is reaching the right people and is reaching them in a way that actually acknowledges their dignity, acknowledges their humanity, and helps to better their situation and advance their cause. So go to the Zakat Foundation, Zakat, ZAKAT.org. I've also been talking for the past several weeks about Roots Community Birth Center in North Minneapolis. This is such a tremendous project, and it's really deeply needed. Roots Birthing Center is one of a very small handful of community birthing centers that's run by Black women. So Rebecca and her team just do such an amazing job at really acknowledging, what's needed in the way of healthcare, in the field of care for women, for families who are welcoming new members of our families and new members of our communities into the world, and making sure that the environment and the process and the communication and the arrangement itself, the entire energy and intention of this interaction, of this exchange, is one that's humanizing and that brings people into the world in a way that's beautiful. Rebecca, like so many of us, was in the world of activism and organizing and speaking out against things, and finally realized, there's a point where people realize that, what can I actually provide? What can I actually do that's going to better the conditions and the reality for people? What do I actually have the ability to change myself? And that work is not glamorous, it's not sexy, There are long hours. Nobody claps for you. There's not a big rally that you get up for and everyone chants a slogan and you do a call and response chant with them and you can post it on social media and all this stuff. She really dedicated her life, and her team have really dedicated their lives to making sure that these disparities that we see in the world, that there's actually a solution for them and there's actually an alternative that's human and that's whole and that's healing. I mentioned in episodes previously that, I have 4 children, and I was really blessed and fortunate to be there for all of the prenatal and postnatal, and for the delivery and the birth and and the labor and the entire process. And the difference that I experienced between going into hospitals, even in wonderful birthing centers and with great doulas and nurse midwives and people who are trying their best. There's something built into those structures that really puts women, particularly women of color, particularly Black women, in a position where they're not validated, they're not empowered. There's a suspicion almost when you walk through the door that you're probably not doing something right. There's this feeling that you don't really know how this should be done, and that you're not really capable and you're not really worthy of being the person in the driver's seat in this process. When in reality, this is the vessel and that this life is being welcomed into the world through. This is the living human being that's delivering this baby. So that person should be, we should just recognize that reality, And so Roots Community Birthing Center is one of those projects that exists in the world that I'm just so grateful for, and it's something that we need. And so head to the website and support them and spread the word. And I'm just very, very grateful to be in partnership with Roots Community Birth Center. Excited to be heading out on tour for the Travelers Tour. That is a celebration of this podcast, but these will be a combination of concerts. If you buy the concert ticket, you're coming to a hip hop show. And we're going to be in there with my amazing DJ Last Word and Mally, who's a really beautiful artist and powerful artist from the Twin Cities. We'll be in there doing our thing, doing songs from the entire catalog. We'll be doing our new joints, our new songs, going through it, and more than this, and just really celebrating the chance to be in a room together. But I want to make sure you also know that we have a VIP package. All of it is available on brotherali.com. If you go to the event section, you'll see all of the shows and you can get your tickets there. But also these VIP packages mean that a select number of people will be able to come into the venue early. You get a free exclusive shirt that's part of that package. And then, we come and do an intimate musical performance for you, but we also have a discussion. It's almost like a version of the podcast that's live and in person. I'll come out and talk about things that we want to give you updates about, or things that I've been reflecting about, and then we'll do question and answers. Some of them will have guests. We haven't announced all the guests yet, but the one that we have been able to announce is that in Madison, my big brother, my mentor, Slug from Atmosphere, will be our guest, and so you'll be able to come in and engage with him during that particular Q&A and VIP session. But really excited for all of this. The highlights from those will be recorded and will be compiled into special episodes of the Travelers Podcast. So look forward to those. These are really enriching and beautiful and informative and instructive conversations that I have with the people that have listened to this music over the years. And so really grateful to be able to share that, and wanted to make you aware of these things so that you can head to brotherali.com in the event section, and we will see you on the Travelers Tour and in those VIP intimate Q&A sessions. I love the fact that when you were a kid, your first 2 English words were hello and shut up. Because as a kid, that's all you need. My friends, I say hello.
Oh my God, no.
The other people, I say shut up.
As a teenager, starting out in middle school, that's probably that's the 2 words you should not have.
And so many
your only words in your vocabulary.
Hey, look, that pretty much covers it though, especially when you're a teenager. Like, are you a hello or a shut up? And some people move from hello to shut up several times within a day. Shut up for an hour and then you'll be hello again. It's crazy.
You need these sentences in between.
Yeah, exactly. And I would help unionize a coffee place especially if we could get you off this Perkins coffee that you seem to like. I never feel sad for you throughout all the things you've been through, like reading your story, except for the fact that you're just drinking such bad coffee, and you come from where originates, and the best coffee in the world is in East
I'm
Africa.
just somebody who appreciates everything, so
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I'm just not a snob for anything.
Okay, that's what's up. Speaking of
Especially
East,
anything that I can get abundance of, and that's the draw to the Perkins coffee because it just keeps coming.
yeah, and you said you were the chair breaker, like you was go in there and sit and hold
Yeah,
court. Did you really think about renting out that Perkins after they closed and making it your campaign headquarters?
I did. I did. Who told you this? This is coming from David.
You told on yourself in your book that
Oh,
you drink this horrible coffee. It's so much that you.
oh, good God! I
Speaking
did
of
open
these,
it.
yeah, no, it's beautiful. You're so giving. You're so generous with your story in that text. There's times where I almost felt shy reading it. There definitely was a lot of times that I laughed out loud. There's definitely times that I teared up, and there's a particular line that got me every time. But on your mother's side, you come from the Benedict clan. And those are people that are well known for being not only really serious Muslims, but also people of the spiritual path. And they also were able to unite the Muslims of East Africa. And they also had some of the first political parties, but they're not overbearing people. Like maybe that came from your dad. They're not tough people. You know what I mean? They're known for being somewhat passive people. Maybe the toughness came from your dad's side.
Oh, definitely.
But I think there's a misconception about Muslim artists and also political leaders that our Islam or our spiritual path is just a symbolic thing that we wear, and that it's not a real living experience that we're having and something that's actually feeding our souls. But I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that you competed with boys in reciting the Quran when you were in the camp in Kenya. And I'm not going to ask you to recite anything, but
Oh, please don't. Yeah.
but that's something that's from your experience. And so when you came to America and come from a very deeply religious and spiritual family, and so when you came to America, like you said, struggling to navigate, what does it mean that I'm Muslim? Because everybody in Somalia is Muslim. If you, as a Muslim convert, when I would greet Somalis as a kid, I would say, "Salam alaikum," and they'd be like, "How do you know Somali?" It's like, no, that's from Islam. Like we say that's all over the world. But navigating, like, what does it mean to be a Muslim? What does it mean to be Somali? What does it mean to be an immigrant? What does it mean to be black? Like suddenly, like you said, like suddenly you're told like, hello, you're black. Like, oh, what does that mean? You know what I mean? But not having all of the same experiences as, people who were descendant from enslaved Africans and all of these things going on. And so you're navigating that for yourself. The two stories that stand out for me, one is when you went to go visit your family in Virginia and you met people who were very serious about their religiosity, but also were people of the spiritual dimension and path, that they're gentle with you. They wouldn't even ask how family members were doing because they didn't want any gossiping to happen, for nobody to be harmed by their tongue. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, the believer is someone that people are free from harm, even from their tongue. They're safe from their tongue. And then you talk about going back to Somalia as a young adult. And when you came back, you forgave your father for the difficulty that he caused you, for times that he was harsh with you. And you also asked him to forgive you because in your navigating, there are times that you did things that made it difficult for him to sit with his friends, that were difficult for him to understand because you're growing up in a different culture than he grew up. And so you forgave him, he forgave you, and eventually you forgave everyone in your family and asked them to forgive you. And so, and the part that always gets me is when they asked your father to write, they wanted to interview him to write a letter about you. And so they thought they'd throw him a softball question. And they asked him, we'll just start with something easy. What do you like about Ilhan? I like everything about Ilhan. I love Ilhan. Allah have mercy on him. I like everything about Ilhan. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Can you talk please about the role of spirituality and emotional intelligence, and the courage that it takes to just be you? because it's such an inspiration. The fact that you're courageous doesn't mean that you don't experience fear. That's what courage is. And just because you're so strong doesn't mean that you don't feel pain, and that when people disparage you and threaten you, and that your family feels it. And, you know, so please, can you talk to us about the role of the spiritual path? For us, it's Islam, but everybody has some sort of spiritual path that they're sojourning upon, you know, and what that's meant for the development of yourself.
I think oftentimes, as Muslims, we talk a lot about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the stories and the lessons that he left with us in the surahs, and we forget to actually, I think, emulate and analyze those lessons. And for me, as a young person growing up in Somalia, where the spiritual parts of the faith were amplified rather than the ritualistic parts of the faith that many focus on in a fundamentalist way, was that we were told to give others grace, to be graceful with ourselves, to be humbling, to have real sense of who we were, so that we weren't easily offended by others and couldn't easily offend others. That to be critical of ourselves before we were critical of others and their behaviors. And so for me, and I think this part of me bothers a lot of people, because I do believe it's important for us to be as gracious to other human beings as we can. So I'm someone who's always like, we have to forgive. We, have to think about what made them do this. And I am this way as a mother as well. And I think, when my father lost his way in that teaching, it was hard for me as a young kid to know that he wasn't being as gracious as he was supposed to be with us and giving us space, especially me being the youngest. And as I got older, I understood that it was him being fearful and scared of what I could become, and it ultimately being a representation of failure for him if I were to fail. And so I needed to forgive him, because I finally understood where he was coming from. And I think when we think about forgiveness, and this was one of those aha moments from Oprah, that we often think is for other people, that we're forgiving others. But when you forgive, it's you forgiving for yourself, right? Because you are unloading the burden,
Right.
That grudge, those hurt feelings, all of that is with you, right? Like, you're carrying that burden. The person that wrongs you oftentimes doesn't even know they did. And so we walk around in this world upset and angry and saddened, but by what others did to us, while they freely walk around not having a clue that there are people upset by it. And so as I have learned to forgive others so that I can unload that burden, I'm also conscious about others who I may carry a burden, because I know that they might not be, as forgiving as I am. And I want to make sure that there are not too many people out there who are made to feel a certain kind of way because of me. And I don't want to get like too religious, but there's there was this story our dad used to tell us, and it was this man who, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, was promised to go to heaven, and he wasn't ordained in any kind of way. He wasn't like a noble man in the standards that people understood. So people were surprised to hear this news that this man who's just a common man was promised to go to heaven while he was alive. And you know, the whole village was walking around trying to figure out how to emulate any of his behaviors. And they found nothing. There was nothing special about this man. He didn't pray more than anyone else prayed. He wasn't the last person to leave the masjid. He wasn't the first person to enter the masjid. He wasn't too close with the Prophet. There was nothing special.
They slept in his house. Someone lied and said, I'm arguing with my dad. Can I stay over at your house? Because they wanted to watch him sleep. What's he doing when he sleeps?
Yeah, so they're investigating this man, right? Trying to figure out, because this is like a big thing. And they eventually learned that every night when he goes to sleep, he does two prayers. And one is to ask for forgiveness from anyone that he has harmed, for God to soften their heart so they can forgive him, and for him to have the ability to forgive everyone who's harmed him. And to me, that has stayed with me, because it's important for us, you know, to do everything that we are told we are supposed to do as Muslims, you know, praying, fasting, and everything else. But it's also important for us to look to those stories and ask ourselves, why is that story in there? That story is in there to tell us that we could be praying, you know, until we're purple or blue. And, you know, if we are a hateful person, we are not tasting heaven at all. And so that says a lot about your soul, your heart, what you're letting in and what you're letting out into the world.
You know, and I think that there are people that may hear this about, and again, we're not solely just talking about the religion of Islam. That's the spiritual language that we share and that so many people around the world do. But, you know, all of the spiritual traditions have this at the root and at the center. And I know that there are people that, you know, because of realities like spiritual bypassing, and because there are, you know, religious people that have sanctified all types of horrible things in all of the religious traditions. But there are people that will hear this and think like, oh, that's going to make me passive. That's going to make me, you know, quiet when it's time to speak up. But in reality, what that does is it alleviates all of these kind of, you know, worldly concerns for a human being and connects them directly with the core and the center of who they are. Because as you describe this, I mean, you're also one of the most vigilant in terms of your truth telling. You're one of the most courageous and direct and specific. Like you are a marksman with your language when it's time to tell the truth. And there are times that you tell the truth when it's unpopular, even in your party. You know, and so, you know, you're somebody that I've noticed that in observing the things that you choose to speak about and highlight, you know, that not only have you had this kind of like living relationship with the spiritual tradition to say like, well, what does this mean to me? And how am I growing into this? And how am I staying, you know, centered with this religion? But how do I keep it in a living conversation with who I am, where I am, so that I'm not only spiritually rooted, but I'm also relevant. And I'm also showing up and alive in this moment, you know. Within the Democratic Party, within the left, do you feel that you have that same type of leverage? I know that, you know, you've been critical. I just saw some things that you posted today about the fact that Biden's administration is now questioning Amnesty International's reports about what the Israeli government is doing to Palestinians. You know, if you criticize Israel for years, their retort would be like, oh, you're anti-Semitic. The last time you and I were on the same stage, we were both campaigning for Bernie Sanders because we wanted our country to elect a Jewish man to be our president. And backstage, so it was you and I and Keith that were the people from Minnesota there supporting him. And backstage, and he was like, I never would have thought that when I came to Minnesota, all these black Muslims would come to surround me with love. It was amazing. You know what I mean? And he had beautiful things to say about you. And he was just like, where do they make people like Ilhan Omar? There's nobody like that. He was so like gushing. His wife was gushing about you. But for years they say you're anti-Semitic. You know what I mean? If you speak against the Israeli government. And, so I've seen you even within your own party just distribute and display an extreme amount of courage in speaking about things that within the party oftentimes go unnamed and go silent. What does it mean to operate inside of even these type of constructs and still be true to yourself? And do you feel like you really have the welcome of the party when you do that? Or do you feel like an outsider even within the party sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not someone, I guess, who worries too much of whether I feel welcomed or or not. It is a party in which I share a lot of values with, and that's why I'm part of the party. And I think it's important to have a healthy relationship with any kind of institution that you are part of. I think it's unhealthy to think that you are to be received with open arms, that you are to be accepted, that everything that you say will be in line, and if you are not someone, which I'm not, who's not willing to mold themselves in the image of what that party is or that institution is, then you certainly should not have those expectations. And I think I have that healthy relationship with the Democratic Party, the Minnesota DFL, and with our country. I can be grateful. I can, be confident that I will lay my life for my fellow men. I can be certain that I have sworn an oath to the Constitution more than many members of Congress have, as someone who willingly took their citizenship in this country, and so I'm confident that of my relationship with this country and with the Democratic Party, and with all the institutions that I've been part of. But I don't need to feel accepted, because that in itself, I think, is at odds with what I feel like my role is. Because my role is to be critical, to make sure that we are changing the things that do not allow for our country to move towards a perfect union as the founding fathers had envisioned. And obviously, if I felt that this was about being celebrated and creating a glorified path for myself, or a career, then that those kind of things would not be my objectives. But for me, I feel the urgency of today, and the urgency of creating a better tomorrow for my kids and the next generation. And I think I'd be doing myself a disservice if I worry too much about who was accepting of me in an institution that I know has traditionally not been welcoming of anybody that looks like me or prays like me or cares like me.
The Travelers Tour is in partnership with Vice Gerent, makers and merchants of fine tailored clothing. You know, it's a really, really beautiful thing. I've been talking about it for the past several weeks, but it's a really beautiful thing to be able to make choices about the clothes that we wear. You know, to go into it and say, like, you know, what I wear and the clothes that I live in, the uniform that I do life in, to be able to choose it and say, like, what intention do I want to bring to myself? What energy do I want to be living inside of? What do I want to communicate, and what do I want to share with the people that I engage and the work that I do and in my comings and goings? Where do I want this material to be sourced? How do I want this to arrive at my doorstep? You know, to ensure that these are sustainably sourced materials and that there's no exploitation involved, and that these things are made to fit my body. There's something really empowering and enriching about just the acknowledgement of saying, I deserve to wear clothes that are made for me. You know, when I wear clothes that are made for some standard shape, I mean, what shape is that? Whose shape is that? You know, and if clothes don't fit me right, then there's subconsciously, I'm telling myself that there's something wrong with me, that I should be doing something so that I can fit these clothes that are made for who, though? Each one of us is different. Each one of us is unique. And so it's reviving a traditional reality, that it's really a new modern kind of thing that we just walk in and buy something off the shelf that was made for standard body type A. You know, but to actually be able to know the person who's making the clothes, for them to sit with me and to have the experience of them thinking about my intention and what I'm wearing these clothes for, and then craft them for me, is just a night and day difference, you know. So head to Vice Gerent. I would suggest following them on social media, because they're just fly, and it's just dope to be able to see. My brother Usman, the tailor from Chicago, has worked with, you know, world-class athletes and entertainers and business people and cultural leaders and religious leaders. But he also works with, you know, common everyday people, and to help them be able to develop a style and an energy and an intention that takes clothes from being something that's just a mundane thing that needs to be done, and actually turns it into a ceremony, that actually turns it into a sacred practice and ritual that enriches our lives. So head to Vice Gerent, check them out. Grateful to be in partnership with them. Travelers Podcast is brought to you by UPF, Unity Productions Foundation. Really dope collective of artists and creatives that produce incredible things. Specifically, we're working with them on their project, which is called Unfold Your Own Myth. This is based on the reality that a person deserves to and really needs to explore themselves and their stories and express themselves. So they've brought together a group of writers, songwriters, poets, singers, presenters, people that for a living have a lifetime practice of exploring and expressing ourselves, and understand the power of telling our story, learning our story, acknowledging our story, and then sharing that ability with people who are deeply in need of it. And I believe that we're all in need of that. We all are in need of acknowledging the life that we're living. That, like, we're all going through tremendous tests and trials and, you know, unexpected twists and turns in the road. You know, some of us may be more outwardly extreme than others, but the reality is that we're all having profound experiences, and we deserve to acknowledge those. You know, so even just the basic act of journaling is so transformative for people. But then also learning how to document our own stories is an acknowledgement of the fact that your story matters, and your story is unique, and your story is actually being authored by the divine. And that the ability to tell that story is helpful not only for you, but also for the people that hear that story. There is someone out there that needs to hear what you have to offer. Not only the fact that these things are happening to other people, but also that the wisdom that you glean from it, the reflection that you're able to have, those are valuable for people. And youth in particular need and deserve to have those skills and tools. And we all benefit from youth having those tools. So this particular Unfold Your Own Myth workshop is one that they developed. And, youth in Afghanistan and all different places in the world that are experiencing, nightmares and catastrophes have been able to learn from this. And I'm honored and blessed to be one of the presenters, one of the contributors to this seminar series that they have online, that they've compiled and that they've formed. So go to upf.tv/unfold, upf.tv/unfold. If you are a person that holds community space, if you're a teacher, if you work with youth, if you work in any type of community, this is a project that you should really look into and should really check out. And we're very grateful to be in communication and in partnership with, and to be able to spread the word about UPF. The Travelers Podcast is supported and really remains independent, not only by these advertisers and sponsors and partners that we work with. And I'm sure you can hear, sometimes I talk too long when I'm doing these ads, because these are people and services and institutions and organizations that I really feel good about. To me, they're an extension of the podcast itself. This is dope work that I believe, I want people to know about this stuff. I want people to be able to just be aware that there are people doing inspirational work in the world, to help and to serve and to benefit others and to enrich the world and to plant grass, and to put some paint where it ain't. But that also really helps to keep us independent. But along with those sponsor partners, we also have a program that we call the Caravan. The Caravan, if you go to brotherali.com/join, it's something similar to Patreon, but it's a different platform that we use that we feel like suits our needs better. But it basically allows you to become a partner of your own contributor to this podcast and to the mission and the independence and the autonomy and sovereignty of this podcast, so that we're able to present things in a way that we feel is healing and is nurturing and that fosters connection. There are different levels there. The most basic level, you contribute a small amount, but with a number of people contributing that, it goes a long way in keeping this podcast independent. And you get the episodes early and without these long ass ad breaks of me just going on and on about my friends and the dope stuff they're doing. And then the second level, you also get the episodes early and ad free, but then you also get an oral history of my first album, basically me recounting what it was like to launch my career, which a lot of people have found to be beneficial, because it's like, how do you get going as an independent artist? How do you do that? What does it really take? Well, this is my personal journey into my entrance into the world of being an independent artist for the last 20 some odd years. And then also there's a special Ask Me Anything AMA episode of this podcast that we do once a month. So, basically it makes me the guest of the podcast. It makes me the person that's being interviewed, and it puts you in the seat of being the interviewer, where you ask me anything and I respond to those once a month for the people that are in that tier. The third tier is an investment, is a pretty serious investment. Those people are contributing $100 a month, and you get all the things that are in those other kind of levels of partnership. But this one is unique in the sense that we really try to foster and create connection and community around the people that are participating at that level. So we have a private Slack channel. We also do once a week in the Slack channel throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. The people can leave voice notes, and you start to see that people are fostering relationships. Some of the people, realize like, there's one sister that's in the group that her brother-in-law was staying at my house at the same time as, a major supporter that we have. So this woman from Chicago and this man from the West Coast realized like, I actually stayed at Brother Ali's house one time when your brother-in-law was there, and I know your brother-in-law. And I heard this about you, and then we have this connection and that connection. And there really is a community growing and building around this level of engagement that we have together. So the podcast will always be free. We'll always offer it. We offer it on all of these free services so that everybody can access it. But for those that want to participate and those that want to be in partnership and those that want to really contribute in this way, basically what it means is not only do we not have to take on corporate sponsorship ads for things that, maybe they're good, maybe the products are good, I don't know, but I don't know those people, but also it means that we are able to present our content in a way where we don't have to play the algorithm game of clickbait, of trying to be provocative, of trying to, spark debate. If people argue and debate in your comment section, it actually raises your profile. If you watch the documentary called The Social Dilemma, and that's really gross. And it's just I just refuse to play that game. I refuse to label things in a way that I know can cause argument. Even though we could do that, we could do clickbait. A lot of programs do it, and I'm not hating on them. I understand why, because otherwise your stuff gets lost. But I would much rather have partners that I believe in, and not only programs and companies and institutions, but also you as listeners that would like to come in as partners on this journey. So go to brotherali.com/join, or go to brotherali.com and go to the join section. Check out the different ways to connect and to engage and to support, and we're very, very grateful to you for doing so. I think our daughters went to the same school for a while. I won't say the name while we're on camera, but and so we used to. I remember one time we were driving.
Which older daughter or younger daughter? How old is your daughter?
So we have 3 daughters. We have a 13-year-old, and I think that she and Isra went to the same school for a while, and then we also have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-year-old. Okay. Yeah, and the 4-year-old will start school here in Turkey on Monday, inshallah. But so I
think the 13-year-old probably went to school with my son, not my daughter.
Okay.
Because Isra is almost 19.
Wow.
But Adnan is 16, so that would make sense that they could have been in middle school together.
We were riding in the van one time, and and we're hearing on we're listening to NPR, and they're saying Congresswoman Omar is receiving all of this vile stuff and whatever, and we're pulling up and we're late. You know what I mean? And like last minute trying to let the kids run in the building before the bell rings so we don't have to come sign you in and you're on time. And there you are in the car in front of us, just dropping off the kids, same as everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Looking like Muslim mom with the cardigan and you know what I mean? Just dropping the kids off like, just another day being Hoyo.
Yeah. Challenging day.
Yes, ma'am. I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's a really busy season for you. I have a million things I would love to ask you about, but for those of us, you come from the private sector, and we're such a profound organizer and activist and mobilizer of people, and really a person that brought community together. And now you're our Congresswoman, and we're very grateful that that's the reality, and we appreciate your service and all of the sacrifice that you make. For those of us that are still out here living life in the private sector, and we have, you in here fighting for us, what would you like from us? We want to show up in a way that makes you feel supported. You know what I mean? We want to show up in a way that makes you feel like all of this, struggle that you're going through, that we're responding and we're reciprocating. Those of us that are still, out here living life, what would that look like? And what would be your advice and your desire for the way that the public shows up?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think, I've always said everybody has a role to play in creating, right, the better world that we're all fighting for. And I think for many of us who, are organizers now within a system that has traditionally been reluctant to change, and has created a hostile environment that is, like you said earlier, makes us continue to feel like outsiders. It's important that people who are not part of these institutions uplift our work and celebrate our work and our advocacy and our, challenge to the system, because it does serve as a counter narrative to what is often being said, which is we are fringe, we are not connected to the American people. We are not speaking on behalf of any constituency. And I think the amplification and celebration of the work that we do really does allow us to say, no, like these are the people that are out there that we fight for, and I think that's the only thing that I would ask.
Mm-hmm. I know you really encourage voting, as just the basic beginning.
That's just basic.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Along with organizing, but for people
right.
to vote, to show up and just, take part in the process.
Vote. I know there's some people who feel some kind of way about voting and participating in a system that hasn't worked for them. But there is real power. We can raise our voice in the streets, but we also have to raise our voice in the ballot box, because the legislators that we elect are able to then legislate on our behalf. And we always say elections have consequences, but we've seen that play out in real world. If Keith Ellison wasn't our attorney general, we wouldn't have the two police killing cases where they're the first times where we've had real accountability.
Yes, ma'am.
For police killings in our city, in our state. And he might now take another one, since we had another young man be executed by the Minneapolis Police Department. So I really do want people to understand that, right? Like their frustration is warranted. But in order for us to overcome that frustration, we have to pour our energy into people that we know will make a difference. They're not going to do everything that we want, because again, right, like these are institutions that have existed for hundreds of years, and it's hard for one person to be changing them, in one election cycle. But we have to be committed, because the people who have the power do not get tired. They don't get frustrated. They continue to organize. And so voting is minimal. Like that's the floor.
It's the beginning.
Yeah.
Price of admission. Your father and grandfather taught you about this mythical, and myth doesn't mean that this isn't a real person, but Somali queen named Arawelo. And just the leadership that we see in you, and what you've contributed to life for all of us, for our daughters and for us. We're just very, very grateful to you, and we pray that Allah give you a long life and protect you from anyone that would want to harm you, and to always give you all of the best of everything, and that all of your best intentions come true beyond your wildest dreams. And we're very, very grateful for you, and we're at your service if there's anything that we can ever do.
I mean, thank you. It's funny you say mythical, because the men in the Somali community describe her as a mythical. Even though they tell their daughters about her. But the women of Somalia have actually created a gravesite where they say the real Arawelo is buried, and annually visit her graveyard. And so to the Somali women, she is a real being that existed and ruled. And so we continue to believe in her generous contribution to the empowerment of Somali women.
Yes, ma'am. And myth doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's not real. It means that they're bigger, that they're larger than life. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, your story is one of those that will be told, for a very long time. We're very, very grateful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us on this episode of the Travelers Podcast. Make sure to like and share and subscribe and comment and rate. All of those things really do a lot to help spread the word about the podcast. That's why everybody asks for those at the end of their podcast. Also want to remind you, go to brotherali.com for all of the things that we're doing for our new music and to get information on the podcast episodes when they drop. Also, go to the events section for all of our upcoming shows, the VIP packages. Go to the join section and check out how to support and to partner with the podcast and to engage on a deeper level. Hit that mailing list so that you can be informed first of all the things that we have coming up. I write those emails myself, and there's never spam or any kind of foolishness like that. Special thanks to Amna Mirza, to Mansoor Panawala, to Last Word, to Amir Rahman, to my man Ant, to Darian Washington. Special thanks to Mark from Medina, who did the stamp logo for this podcast. Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly, AKBK1, and is a production of Travelers Media. Thank you all, and as always, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.